Okay. So, this is the second video of this chapter, The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. So, till now we got to know about the character, the peaceful appearance of the grandmom, okay, and the age, the grandfather, the details regarding the characters. Now, let us see, here we will get to know about the relationship that the author is having with the grandmom and how it is gradually changing with different kinds of reasons, right. So, let us focus on the topic again. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. Constantly means regularly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing song while she bathed, and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. So, she is preparing the author for the school, and she is also chanting the mantras and morning prayers, and she is also hoping that probably the author is also eager to learn that what my grandmom is saying and what are the meanings and the values of the mantras and prayers. I listened because I loved her voice but never bothered to learn it. So, the author is clearly giving his clarification that I listened, but I never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. So, these are the equipments that we need to go for school in that days. Nowadays, it is not like this, we are having pen and paper, and now it is also ultra modern, we are having online things, online classes. So, it is very difficult for you to believe, but in those days people used to write on the chalk with that on that slates with chalk, okay. And it is very difficult to remember what I have learned in school, because you have to rub it, again you have to write, but in copy you can have the record, but here it is not possible for them. So, quite harder. Anyways, so here these are the equipments. I am reading the line again, listen carefully. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. After a breakfast of a thick stale chapati, stale means no longer fresh, okay, that we call in Hindi or in Bengali basi. So, stale chapati with a little butter and sugar sprayed on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dog. So, she is very caring. We can get to know about this character, because she is also feeding the street dogs, the village dogs, the stale chapatis. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. So, this is the location of the school, very important for short questions. Okay. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. So, question can come that who is teaching the alphabet and the morning prayer to the students? So, the answer is the priest. Priest means the one who is doing all the religious activities. Okay. While the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus, my grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. So, the lady is also there and she is also reading the scriptures. Scriptures means like holy books, means the ethical or moral learning things that she is reading. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. So, there is nothing to understand. When they are returning, they are feeding the dogs and the dogs are fighting in between them in order to get the chapatis, right. Next, when my parents were comfortably settled in a city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. In our friendship means the grandmom and the author. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. So, now they are shifting to city, and there is a kind of change that the author can observe in the grandmom. What? That my grandmother no longer came to school with me, but in that village, in that previous location, she used to come, but now she is not coming. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. So, now there are actually no dogs in the streets, and she is also not coming. So, she ultimately is serving to the sparrows, to the birds in the courtyard of our city house, right. So, you can see the location, you can try to understand when I am reading through picturization. Okay. So, she is now feeding the sparrows. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. So, according to the grandmom, this teaching is not at all good, because this is not a kind of religious teaching. Means the teachers are not giving moral lectures, or religious content is not there. There is no God, no scriptures, only logical things, or you can say material things they are learning, English words, the gravity, the principles of Archimedes, all these things related to science and everything, right. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had livid associations. Livid associations means a kind of typical of the lower order, that music is not good for our class. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for gentlefolk. So, according to the grandmom, music is not at all good, because it is for the beggars and the harlots. Okay. And she is very much disturbed that the author ultimately shared this kind of experience, that they were being given music lessons in those days. Okay, but now it is music is having a kind of different career, different kinds of courses are there in music. So, this. So, this was the belief system of that particular period, but now it is completely changed in the modern time, right. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. So, she said nothing, she remained silent. That means that she disapproved these ideas, and she after that she really talked to me. So, a kind of change in the character we can observe, and a kind of change in the relationship between the grandmom and the grandson, between the grandmother and Khushwant Singh we can also see, right. So, here in the second video we got to know about the parents and the schooling, how they are going, the stale chapatis, the street dogs, and the prayers, the priest, and then the turning point, they are going to the city, and she is no longer coming to the school with the author, and she is now feeding to whom? To the dogs or the sparrows, definitely the sparrows in the cities. Okay. And she is not at all happy with the teaching system, with the methodology that the English schools are taking, because they are not giving any kind of teaching regarding God and the scriptures, and for her music is not at all good, right. So, let us see how the story is progressing in the next video. Thank you.